and trying to navigate that.
That's what scares me about this seemingly inevitable connection with humans and technology, is that I think what we're going to do is integrate with technology to avoid all the problems that we have existing in this modern world with this ancient hardware.
Mm-hmm.
And that we're going to adjust our hardware. And that it seems to me that this is inevitable. It seems to me that this is just where we're going, and that humans are going to be some sort of cyborg type thing. And also with the invention of AI, and I'm sure you're paying attention to all this chat GPT stuff and that, and deep fakes. There's so many deep fakes. People keep sending me commercials that I've never done for, penis enhancements and, all these different things. Wild commercials.
Insane stuff.
And it's my voice.
Yeah.
And it's my lips moving, and it shows me talking about how great these products are, and I've never even heard of them.
Yeah.
And this is just the tip of the iceberg. We're just starting to be able to fake things like that. We're on a consumer model, like someone can just buy the software and put it together, and and now AI can make literal films. So, at one point in time, right now there's kind of like the uncanny valley in some ways, where you can kind of see the difference between what's real and what's not real. You can kind of like, it looks fake. Right. How long before, like UFO footage, great example. Jeremy Corbell, who's like the premier UFO researcher with George Knapp, every now and then I'll find something online and I'll send it to him. He's like, oh, that's bullshit, dude. Like this is what they did, and you can see it. This is how, and this is why, and like, oh, okay. But there's a lot of that. There's a lot of fake stuff, and it's hard to know. It's hard to know what's real and what's fake, and we kind of can tell now. But will we in 20 years? I bet no.
No, and it could be 5 years.
Yeah, it might not. I'm being very generous.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's 5 months. It's weird.
Yeah, and I think we naturally gravitate to the technology, right? Everyone adopts it, and then it's just a part of life.
Yeah, it's just
right.
a part of life.
You just sort of fall into it.
Yeah.
And oftentimes you get punished if you're not using the technology, even though it might be bad for you in the long run.
Yeah.
So think about something like trying to keep, say, a teenager off of social media. We know it's probably not a great place for them to hang out a ton.
Right.
And yet, if they're not on it, their life suffers.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're not as dialed in socially. And for teenagers, being social is very important due to how the brain is changing at the time.
Right.
But even think about work, especially with how the nature of work has changed after COVID with more people working from home. If you don't want to be stuck on email all day, it's like, I totally get that. But now if you decide, well, I'm not going to check my email during these times because it drives me insane. Now you're a negligent employee. So you effectively have to adopt the technology to live in the system, and then the system starts to sort of govern your actions.
I read an article about a woman who was fired, and she met all of her productivity goals. She was working remotely, but the company detected that she hadn't clicked enough on her computer. She hadn't hit enough keystrokes. She hadn't moved her mouse enough. And I think there was also an issue with the amount of time she spent in front of the computer, that it wasn't enough. Meanwhile, she met all of her goals. So, like, how many people are just in front of an office where they're not checking, in a cubicle, just bullshitting, probably listening to this podcast right now?
Yeah. Enjoy.
Enjoy. And they're okay. They're okay because they are in front of that computer, and as long as they move their cursor around and do things, and they could be listening to this podcast on their AirPods while they're also fucking around and doing all these other things. As long as they spend it, and they might not be as productive, but they are doing the thing that the algorithm wants them to do. Mm-hmm. This lady got fired.
It's crazy.
But maybe she doesn't need to work as much to meet the productivity goals that you set for her, but she's a good employee.
Right.
If you set a productivity goal for an employee, say, hey, we need to get, X amount of units of work done by Friday. And she does it. Didn't she do her job? Like, if she can do her job in 31 hours and the average person needs 44, isn't she a better employee?
Yeah, she's more productive.
Yeah, she's better, right? Does she have to be clicking on things constantly? And it's kind of crazy. This lady got fired. I'm like, that's why. It makes me wonder. Maybe there's some other factors, but maybe not. Maybe it's just as simple as, like, they're just following numbers, and that's how they hire and fire people.
Well,